Hello, my name is Luciano Floridi and I'm the Professor of Philosophy and Ethics of Information at the Oxford Internet Institute of the University of Oxford, where I also direct the Digital Ethics Lab. Thank you very much for this kind invitation to share with you some thoughts via video. I'm very sorry not to be with you, and I apologize for this very non-interactive way of sharing a few thoughts. I'm grateful for the opportunity, and I hope to contribute a little bit to the debate you will have today. I won't be long, and therefore I will restrict myself to sharing a couple of points. One about the new guidelines for the ethics of AI, which we published with a high-level group of the European Commission in April. And the other one about education and the ethics of AI, what we could and should do about it. About the first point, as you may imagine, as a member of the group, I'm quite proud of the work we did, but I'd like to share with you why I think it's a good step in the right direction. If you have seen the guidelines, you will probably have noticed that are quite thorough, lengthy at some points, but they also fix a few essential elements in a framework for the ethics of AI, which we need. I heard people saying, and they are right, that there are plenty of initiatives about this. Frameworks, guidelines, list of principles. They are published almost weekly by anybody and his uncle. So do we really need one more? Well, the answer is yes, for very good reasons. It's not anybody and his uncle that is publishing these guidelines, it's the European Commission and a high-level group. It's not something that will remain just a web page somewhere, but it's something that will inform, hopefully, and support European legislation about this. So it is a matter of fixing a framework that is establishing a threshold on which and past which we will need to build. So it's great to have a flourishing of initiatives, but it's also important at some point to converge on a similar, roundabout, so to speak, or framework, and decide, well, from now on, this is how we do ethics of AI in Europe. It's a contribution to a much wider context, a much bigger conversation, international, but it does fix the sort of state of the art of the ethical debate about AI. I also heard other people saying that they are rather toothless or a bit weak, not innovative enough. Well, let me sort of call your attention to the following point. We've been discussing the ethics of AI since the 1960s. It's more than half a century. Would you really expect something totally new and unheard of once it comes to summarizing, synthesizing, refining the work done and regroup and therefore have a threshold, as I said, or a point of departure? Of course not. I would have been astonished and perhaps a little bit worried if we had invented something totally unheard of, completely surprising. So it is a good thing that the guidelines summarize and are in line with past debate and current legislation, GDPR included. But finally, why is this helpful in general? Well, because we need to have a common language here. To use a bit of a fancy word, we need a new koine, a new common Greek language to speak about the ethics of AI. And the guidelines provide a huge contribution in this direction. So next time we want to talk as European Union to Singapore or to South Korea, to Canada or to Israel, to other centers of production of AI, well, at least we know that we have potentially a common shared language of ethical principles, expectations, and a framework. So it's a good thing. And mind that I also say this in view of Brexit. It might be something that we will cherish, no matter what Brexit looks like, in order to make sure that UK and EU will keep the dialogue going when it comes to the ethics of AI. Once again, because we will have a shared framework and therefore a channel of communication that helps to move forward. So for all these reasons, I'm quite happy to see this work done. I think colleagues there have done a magnificent work in synthesizing a very complex debate, and it's been an open debate as well, as you know. More than 500 documents of feedback on previous versions. This is how it's done. This is how it should be done. I mentioned the guidelines, but I also said that I wanted to share a second point that seems to me crucial within the wider spectrum of initiatives and the wider scope of ethical principle when it comes to AI. Education. I know, and I'm aware, that education is usually the panacea for almost any digital problem. Fake news, more education. Problems with AI, more education. Drones misused, well, we need to educate people how to use them. On and on and on. You can't get it wrong. Whenever someone raises an issue, well, the staple, ordinary, simple answer is educate, educate, educate. Now, just because it's so obvious, it doesn't mean that it's mistaken, but it does mean that it may lose some real traction. We're getting used to say, oh yes, of course, we will need more education. How can it possibly go wrong if we educate more? Well, let me sort of try to make it a little bit more significant when it comes to the ethics of AI. 2 points here, or I should say sub-point in the general point of education. 1, let's make sure that education is not a matter of reshuffling or reallocating responsibility. It's a dangerous game when we try to make sure that by educating someone, we also shift the responsibility for anything going wrong. If a particular algorithm does not work properly, it would be horrible if we were to blame the user by saying, well, we educated you, you didn't make the right choices, it is your fault. Imagine a similar approach or strategy in the safety and health system. You take a train, something goes wrong, and they say, oh, well, you didn't check whether the train was safe. That would be absurd. So let's make sure that education is a matter of improving how we use technologies to do a better job, to be better people, to take care of the environment more effectively, but not to shift responsibility, which has to remain with those who design, deploy these algorithms one way or another. The other aspect of education that I'm quite keen to stress is how are we going to deliver this education? Of course, schooling, university education is always at the forefront. And I'd like to report here on a very successful experiment we have had here in Oxford, just to share with you something that perhaps might be interesting or may show a couple of things that went well and another couple of things that could have gone better. It's a story that has a long past, and fortunately I'm directly involved, so forgive me for this moment of self-reference. When I was a very young postdoc here in Oxford, in 1999, I thought that because of the importance of computer science, of digital technologies, IT in general, but also the coming of the internet, which was obvious to anyone who had eyes to see, we should have philosophers educated in computer science. Now, philosophy in Oxford cannot be studied as a single subject. It has to be joined with other subjects. And there is quite a variety of degrees, but not much freedom in shaping each degree. So one can join philosophy with mathematics, maths and philosophy, or physics and philosophy, theology and philosophy, modern languages and philosophy, classics and philosophy, or the most popular one, which is called PPE, philosophy, politics and economics, and so on. I thought, well, that's quite simple. We take the degree of maths and philosophy, we replace the maths with computer science, job done. I said it was 1999, I spoke to the computer scientists, I spoke to philosophers, and Well, we did not make much progress. After 2 years of debates, committees, revision of projects, in the end, honestly, I gave up. The computer scientists were excited, the philosophers not so much. They thought that computer science was a vocational subject. Well, it takes sometimes patience and years to make sure that good ideas flourish. And so, interestingly, many years later, we're now talking about 2012, so 13 years later, we finally establish and launch a new degree in computer science and philosophy, of which I'm immensely proud. I was not involved at that point, perhaps too old to get involved in the particular procedure to shape this degree, but I think that is the right direction. I have not changed my mind since 1999. I think philosophers should be involved as anyone else who can contribute to a better understanding of what we're doing and therefore a better shaping of how we are doing what we're doing. Innovation must be understood, but must also steered in the right direction. And what better than having a computer science and philosophy degree as an undergraduate? Well, I can tell you, if I could be born again, if I could go back in time, and if I could be accepted here in Oxford for a degree, that would be my choice. As I said, we just covered two topics. One very general, the ethics of AI, the European guidelines, and one quite specific, education, computer science and philosophy, among many other subjects that need to be joined. I think from the particular to the universal, there's an enormous amount of work, good work, that we can do. And I know that the conference that you are attending is part of this good work. So thank you again for this invitation, and I wish you a very productive day for a conference that is definitely deserving all the success it can possibly have. Thank you.